Welcome to Mighty Banyans on the Bay, the faculty podcast of New College of Florida. My name is Douglas Estes, and I'm Associate Professor of Religion here at New College.
And I'm Alicia Mercado-Harvey. I'm Assistant Professor of Spanish and History. And today we have a really exciting guest from our faculty, Dr. Briana Aguila-Ames, and she is in chemistry. She's Assistant Professor of Chemistry. Yes. Welcome, Briana.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So you're Floridian, right? That's one of the first things that caught my attention, right? Because you don't find that many native Floridians. So,
yes, it's a rare breed.
Right. So where are you in Florida? Where are you from?
So my hometown is about an hour inland from here. So I grew up coming to these beaches as a kid.
Oh, wow. So you knew about New College as a kid.
Yes. Actually, it was kind of funny. So I think it was in middle school, they had where you could take like the ACT or SAT early, and if you got a certain score, you got an award. And so I came to New College to like get the award, and I was so nervous. So I knew about it my whole life, and I was like, oh, I'll never go there. And so now full circle, now I get to educate the students here. So I really feel really grateful that I can teach fellow Floridians.
Wow, that's a fantastic story. So thanks for sharing it.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about some of the recent research that you've done. I know you have a recent paper on, I guess, the entrapment of CO2 in the earth. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to collaborate with research scientists at Pacific Northwest National Lab, and so I was able to travel there and go to the lab with students, which was a really, really great experience, especially, being at liberal arts colleges. Sometimes you don't have as many of the resources or dedicated time to commit to the research. And so I was able to do that, and so we took minerals that came from the ground, so like real life minerals, not just synthesized ones, and we inject them with CO2. So they have this one-of-a-kind instrument to where you are able to pump CO2 into the system with the exact pressure and conditions with regard to like water and things like that and temperature. And then as it injects, you're able to track it in real time and see how it transforms. So what happens is that these minerals, they're composed of these silicates. And so these silicates have these metals, and those are kind of the key here. So once you get to that pressure and you dissolve that silicate to the conditions that you need, then the minerals are released. Well, at the same time, you have the CO2 coming in, and it's going to react with the metals that are released from the silicate. And it's kind of funny because whenever I'm talking about precipitation reactions in general chemistry, I immediately think of my research, and so I try and tie that in with it. And so carbonates are very insoluble, and so whenever they react with the metal, they're going to precipitate out as this solid product. Right? So kind of like the fundamentals behind it. And so the research scientists, they know that this is happening, and it even happens like passively. So over time, like really just taking inspiration from what's happening in nature. And so, but with our rising CO2 concentrations, we kind of need to treat it a little bit faster than what's happening on its own. And so, but we don't want to just pump it underground and be like, okay, we took care of it. You really want to understand the process, the mechanism, any downstream effects. Is it going to redissolve and then the CO2 is re-emitted? And so there's so many different aspects that you can look at with it. So we were really looking on like a fundamental scale. As we inject the CO2 and it's transforming, what is it turning into? What is the time scale? Does the temperature matter? And just really getting a lot of data on a couple of the minerals at a time. And so it was exciting because we kind of, you go into it thinking like, oh, I know what this is going to turn into. Right. And then you get a product that you weren't expecting at all. So it was really exciting. And so we were able to publish that work, which was really great. And then it's something that I'm really passionate about and want to continue now being at New College. So have adapted some of the projects so that can work on them with New College students and have gotten them involved. And then we're actually trying to go back this summer to the National Lab. And then I'm also supplementing that with getting more equipment on campus. Really want to support this so that students can work on it with their honors thesis and potentially, get plugged in with these research scientists for future work after they graduate.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me, or one thing, is that it sounds like that you identified a natural process that was already occurring, and then you are testing to see how you can sort of improve upon, this natural process. And that seems like a really good way of doing science.
I think so. I mean, nature has kind of perfected a lot of things.
Right,
So,
right.
why go against the grain, but support like what's already happening and then improve upon it. And then just, we want to keep using our technology. We're going to keep burning fossil fuels. So we need to be good stewards of that.
Right.
And other, green and renewable energy sources are great, but they're not going to be able to support everything we need. We need to look at it from a more holistic view
Right.
and see how we can support each other in these different kind of, avenues.
Right. And this seems like a possible solution. Yeah.
Yeah, they did a field site test. They've done one in Europe, and then they did one here, because there's different scenarios where, depending on where you are, the different minerals you have, and also the resources of water, that's really
Right.
crucial. So the site they did in Europe, it was called Carb Fix, and they have this waterfall. So they have a constant supply of water that they can do. And so if you don't have that, water is still important, but what you can kind of take advantage of is that at certain pressures, CO2 becomes supercritical. So you're basically in this in-between state of phases between gaseous and liquid. And so if you can take advantage of that, you can introduce like the silicate the dissolution process without needing a ton of water to accomplish that. So it's really also just seeing like what works for the region and not trying to be like, it's not a one size fits all.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question here because, this is really fascinating how you can apply science to something that everybody understands today, right, that we're having with global warming and all that. So how do you think that the practical use of this could be? I know this is not, where your expertise, but how do you envision that this may be used in practical terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one thing I like about this project is that because there's so many people looking at it at different phases, there's people doing computational studies and then kind of like the smaller bench scale, which is what I'm involved in, the field sites, and then there's engineers that are even working on it further. So where I see it going is kind of coupling it with industry. So if you have a plant or something like that where their flue gas is coming out, you're trapping it directly and having an injection site like on site. So it's basically like almost never even leaving the atmosphere, because there's other researchers where they're looking at like direct air capture. That's a whole other project that's going to happen. You think even though the concentration is rising, it's still not the biggest, concentration of gas in our atmosphere. So it's still, you have to have a very selective process. But if you could connect it directly to the industrial site, then you're going to be able to basically take care of your waste immediately and have that injection pump site. So that's kind of where I see so maybe where it could be an initiative to implement in current industry or have incentives for if you're building a new plant to have that incorporated into your system.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be a really practical and very beneficial tool to have.
I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
I really like applied research. So chemistry sometimes can seem very abstract for students, but even for me, I like seeing where it's going, because then I can connect more and feel more engaged.
Absolutely.
One thing we learn even in grade school is like different types of rock formations and that sort of thing. Is there a type of mineral that is preferred? Have you found like a type of mineral that is much more effective?
Yeah, so I can only speak from my own personal experience, but the one that we are using is basalt rock.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so that's very prevalent, and, I must admit, I'm not a geologist, and so
Sure.
that's why we collaborate, because, you
Right.
build on your strengths. And so I don't know exactly which one it falls in, but that is the type of rock that looking at. And the reason why it's so great is because it has those silicate minerals, so it has the metals that are coming out, which are the key part, but it also has these pores. So if you imagine if you're injecting the CO2, it needs to go somewhere. So you can't just have this like compressed rock the whole way through. You need to have this porous system where like the water, the CO2, everything can kind of almost like a little microreactor underground.
Right.
And there's also a cap rock on top, which is one thing that kind of leads us to think that this won't necessarily be just re-emitted, because you kind of have that like barrier seal on top.
Wow.
It's going to
yeah.
keep it.
Yeah.
Because it's not immediate, that's another thing. I guess as you inject it, it's not necessarily that it's going to happen like this. The field site, I think, was like 5 years, and then they
okay.
analyzed the cores
Right.
afterwards. So
Right.
you don't want to inject it and then it just come back out.
Right, for sure. So you mentioned research, and you mentioned actually the interesting thing is the interdisciplinary aspects of the research you're doing, because it involves some geological knowledge and,
Yes.
and other. So tell us a little bit about what you like about New College. I know I led the question with research and interdisciplinary, which is like our thing, but then, please tell us.
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I've known about New College since I was a kid. It was always felt something that was maybe out of reach for me. I was kind of the shyer child who was like, let me just sit in the back, do my work, not have anyone, look at me or talk to me while I'm trying to work. But as I've developed as an educator and in academia, I've realized how beneficial it is to have that engagement, to get people talking and thinking and not just, projecting information at them and then hoping it absorbs through osmosis. And so working at New College is really a dream for me. I mean, we have amazing students and the small class sizes are incredible. I love that I get to know all of my students and really kind of see like what they're interested in and probe that. And then a challenge for me is then how can I make my course applicable to what they want to do? How can I make those real life connections? And because I know them, I can, when I see something, I can think, oh yeah, so-and-so is interested in this. Let me talk to them about it. Right. And then I always kind of, as I was in graduate school, I knew that I really loved engaging with students. So that was kind of a natural fit with coming to like a liberal arts college. But what kind of I think sets New College apart is how it's coupled with the research. Because I do love doing research. I think it's really powerful, and you gain so many other skills, even just separate from whatever your project is. I mean, writing, time management, working with others as a team. And so the fact that we have that thesis component and then just really all of the built-in parts with our tutorials, our ISP projects, I mean, there's so many avenues where students are able to participate in research without, like it's part of the culture almost, to be involved and be engaging the mind in a different way, where you're coming up with your own project as opposed to maybe just something that I've designed. I think that's probably the most rewarding. It's like I have my research that I like to do, but when a student comes to me and they've got an idea that's coming off of that I wouldn't have thought of, that's amazing.
Right. Do you have any other research avenues that you're thinking about, or or that you're involved with besides the CO2 and capture?
Yeah. So in graduate school, I did some water purification work.
Okay.
So I would say overall, I'm really interested in environmental chemistry and just seeing how a lot of times chemistry is associated with like toxic chemicals and, not great. So I think, being able to kind of look at it through a lens of how it can be useful and help the environment, introducing more like green chemistry experiments as I teach and things like that. So definitely anything with environmental chemistry I'm interested in, with water purification being one example. And then I have some experience with synthesis. So if students wanted to synthesize, a product and then use it for an application, I think that's really cool and like a nice full project for someone. And then I am also interested in chemistry education. So I've gone to a couple things to try to learn like how can I improve as an educator, and then how can I expand this to be an actual project that I can involve students in and get them engaged, especially if someone's interested in, education after they graduate, since we don't have an education program, but there's a way to do discipline-based education research.
Right. And on that same, since you're so interested in education, which is great, for New College, can you tell me what classes you're teaching? You have any favorites?
Yeah. So I kind of go through the gambit. I feel like, it was fun because I taught general chemistry 1 and 2. So I got the full series with the students, and then I've taught organic chemistry. So the students have really gone with me on this journey as I've been at New College, which is fun. And then I also teach inorganic chemistry, which to me is more of an extension of general chemistry, but is more tailored for junior and senior level students. And so it's kind of taking those general chemistry concepts and then expanding on the why, as opposed to like, yes, we have the periodic table, we have these trends, but why? And so it's really fun because you get to dig deeper and kind of explain a lot of the phenomena that we see in chemistry. So that one might be my favorite. But then I'm also going to be teaching a course in the fall for like chemistry communication, research, and careers. And I kind of piloted as a tutorial, a smaller tutorial last semester. And so I'm really excited to dig deeper in that because I feel like that'll be a great extension of like how I do want to get to know the students and help support them. So being able to help them with like communicating with regard to like their thesis or publication or conference presentation, and then what things they can do to help support whatever career they want to pursue and things like that. So inorganic might be my favorite, but I love them all.
Great. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So if students are interested in coming to New College, environmental chemistry is a big part. Teaching, chemistry education is a big part. Yeah. So what would you say to a student who wanted to maybe study chemistry, come to New College? What should they do to prepare?
Yeah, so I would say that sometimes you have students that they come in and they are like, oh, I didn't take chemistry, or I, didn't have a great teacher in high school, or, with the pandemic, people having to move online, it's just a different standard. But I would say for any student to not be discouraged with any sort of preparation, because you're going to come in, and if you have an open and growth mindset, then you're going to be able to take the information and apply it. And everything in chemistry, like, we set it up so that it builds. So yes, maybe there might be some fundamental like algebraic skills that you would want to be strong on, so you could not focus so much on like how to set up a problem, but then focusing on like the chemistry content it covers. That would probably be the only thing where if you're going into chemistry that can be a hurdle for students. But still, I feel like any student, if you feel like you can do it, then you're going to be able to. And then with us having those smaller classes, there's just so much more opportunity to tailor things to each student and to see like the areas where you're struggling and help them and provide resources, and not just be like, okay, you're one of 300. I have no clue who you are.
Right.
So I think people see chemistry and they get like scared by it. So I just always hope that students will come into it with an open mind and not be intimidated. Because I will be honest, chemistry was not easy for me when I started, and I tell all my students that. I went to tutoring. I remember failing my first exam and crying because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this. But chemistry is more about, I think, like perseverance and just trying, like, it's about the effort, not necessarily like you are expected to know everything immediately.
Yeah. It's interesting because when we had Professor Serban on a couple weeks ago, and the thing I hear over and over again is that because New College is a true liberal arts college, that it's not like you're going to take general chemistry and there's 300 people and it's a weed out situation at all, but you're going to come in to a environment with a small class size where the faculty want you to succeed, and it seems like across the board that's the way it is here.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I mean, because I'm going to notice if you're not coming to class or not turning things in or not engaging. I mean, it's just harder to hide, which can be intimidating, but also is really great if you need that support, or you're just you're struggling, but you just need someone to reach out and notice. And so we're there to do that. Yeah.
It may not be a lack of ability, but it may just be, maybe didn't have good study skills in high school, but certainly has passion for chemistry and the intelligence to do it.
Absolutely.
And, just needs that help or that support that a liberal arts college can provide.
Right, yeah. I think like a lot of the transferable skills, it could be chemistry, it could be physics, it could be calculus. I mean, I'm speaking from a natural science lens, but any course that you're struggling with, it's just figuring out like what works for you. Maybe reading is what gets you, maybe writing, maybe doing practice problems, but it's finding what system works best for you, and then you're going to be able to apply that to all your classes. So if you didn't have to worry about that before, now you do, but figure that system out and then you can do anything. I think.
And also the lab, right? The fact that the students are also able to do all the things, because a lot of times in bigger universities, it's just a graduate students, supervise.
Right.
Like here, you're supervising the students on things that they're doing, and so.
Yes, and I think the hands-on approach, because then you can couple that with like, yeah, we learned that in lecture. There was a reason why we had a temperature listed and a solvent, because we need that temperature to, have enough energy to get this reaction going. We need this particular polar solvent to get this going. So being able to, especially students that are more tactile,
Right.
they're able to like kind of engage with it more and be like, oh, now that I've like held it and I've done it and I've mixed it, I get it a lot more. And then being able to, right, it's not that disconnect of like, oh, I'm a teaching assistant who maybe doesn't care for being realistic, but I really care. And so I'm going to not just say like, oh, do it because I said so. I'm going to at least try to provide that context so that it's a learning experience as well.
Absolutely. So tell us what you mentioned before, that there's new equipment, right? Because I know there's a lot of renovation happening in the natural sciences also with other professors that are buying equipment and, enlarging their labs or even building some. So what things are you going to be using, with the equipment that you're ordering?
So what's great is that at New College we had a lot of the stuff I already used, so that was wonderful. I mean, using some of the spectroscopy tools that we have, and then our lab setups with being able to do reactions in an inert atmosphere, like that was already there, which was wonderful. So then I could really focus on like, what do I need for my research that's specific to me that we don't necessarily have. And so I'm very excited because at the end of the month, I'm going to have installed a benchtop powder X-ray diffractometer. So why I'm so excited about that is because I was saying, like, as you inject the CO2 and you can track how it changes, the way we track it is based on its crystal structure. So if you have like a defined, repeating, think about like a cube, all right? If I have, my structure is a cube, then the X-rays are going to be able to hit that sample, and as it does, then it's going to give a peak. And so it will do it for all of these different angles, and then every time it hits, an atom in the sample, it's going to give a very distinctive peak. So if you have a set structure, this is always going to give you the same pattern every time. And so what we will be able to do now on campus is to be able to take our real samples, check the pattern, make sure it matches up with literature, do these CO2 mineralization experiments. Now, we won't be able to do them in real time, but hey, that's why we have collaborators.
Right.
But we'll be able to do experiments, and then after we've done with our CO2 injection, we'll be able to see how the mineral has transformed by tracking that crystalline pattern. And so I'm very excited. And what's great is that with this equipment, I have a very specific use for that research project, but it can also be used in some teaching experiments.
Great.
So that'll be really exciting for inorganic. I'm not picking favorites, I promise. And then for other research, so anything that's crystalline, you could analyze it with this powder X-ray diffractometer. And it's really nice because since it's a benchtop model, very low upkeep, so it's going to be able to be used for a long lifetime, and students will be able to use it. It won't just be me, like, watch me do it. Like, I can actually teach them how
It's
to
a
do it.
hands-on thing that they could,
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. One thing that I would love to hear your thoughts on, one of the things that I'm proud of is that not only did I go to a small college and major in chemistry, but I actually had to have a senior thesis, just like here. And so I did, my senior thesis was on polymerization, okay? Right. And so, but here the students don't just go complete their classes and graduate. They actually have to do a real senior project, a real senior thesis in the area of chemistry. Tell us about that.
Yes, I think that is so great. Depending, anything that they want to do afterwards, having done work on that senior thesis is going to provide them with so many skills and experiences that they're going to be able to take with them. Now, obviously, the most direct application is if they wanted to go to graduate school, because what they're doing is almost like a master's level thesis project. It's incredible. So I think that is amazing, and I really love how interdisciplinary we are, and that if you have a joint, so let's say someone wanted to do chemistry and art, per se, we could design a really cool project where their thesis is going to incorporate both of those things. And so I love that idea. Right. And then it really gets their gears turning as they're taking classes and thinking about like what they want to do. And so because everyone is going to be doing it and they are going into it knowing that, I think you almost look at things a little bit differently. Like, you know, you're thinking like, oh, what can I do? And so you can take whatever you're learning in class or maybe like a small research project and you think, how can I expand on this? How can I grow this into my own, you know, project? So
yeah,
yes.
You're not just simply checking boxes. You know, you're actively involved, and it has to be something that you're committed to for several years. Which, at that age, sometimes I'll just point to myself. But I mean, you're not used to multi-year commitments, maybe.
No, definitely not. So it's really great. And you know, with chemistry, most projects are going to be lab-based, and so you need to set aside that time to plan your experiment, do your experiment. They never work the first time. I mean, it's just, I always tell my students, give yourself double the amount of time you think, because you're going to think everything is perfect. You set it up, it doesn't work, and you're like, what did I do? You didn't do anything. It's just, you know, that's why we do replicates, because that's how you know it's actually, you know, valid. And so giving yourself that time to make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and then develop it even further. And then you need time to analyze your data, write it up. I mean, it is a lot of work, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, great.
So, finally, we would like to know if students, potential students, or even people from other colleges that want to come to New College, how would they find about you, your research, and all of that? Tell us.
Yes, absolutely. If anyone had any questions about chemistry, classes, New College, my research, definitely reach out via email. And so my information is on the New College directory site, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone. But email would be the best way to contact me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today. And as we always say at the end of every episode, go Mighty Banyans!